And we're live. So welcome to SETV, the first episode.
Hello, everybody.
Yes, hello everybody, and welcome to A Sip of Cinema.
Wow, you gotta watch A Sip of Cinema, bro.
Nah, it's bloody shit, mate. Don't watch.
Hadouken! 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Okay, so that's our introduction to A Sip of Cinema episode 1. Well, that'll be the introduction every week. Hang on, I don't know why I closed my laptop. All right, so this show is primarily going to be a discussion on an important film from the 80s and 90s. Basically, just movies from our childhood, because they sort of stick out in the mind a little bit more. And this week, well, the first step, I sort of chose Bloodsport as the first episode deliberately because it's sort of significant in ways that's sort of hard to describe, like without going into a long like monologue, whatever. But I don't know. For me, it was just like we used to watch it just over and over again on VHS back in the 90s. It's just one of those movies you sort of watch over and over again. You sort of remember all the lines and you sort of repeat what you see and what you hear. And, I don't know. What was it like for you?
Yeah, definitely. Those kinds of action movies, the action genre, growing up in the 80s and early 90s, those movies kind of like shaped how we wanted to, kind of like shaped, what's that word? I don't know.
Well, it's shaped. Well, if you want to talk about, like, I guess you're talking about influence. So it's sort of, it was related to everything that we were into at the time.
Yeah, definitely. It was the cool kind of people that we idolized or like we wanted to be like.
Yeah. So to put it into context, so we were really into things like, we were into stuff that wasn't Australian, just put it that way. Like we grew up in Melbourne, but like I remember we were always into, rap, NBA, martial arts movies, like video games, sci-fi, comic books, like a lot of nerdy stuff and a lot of non-mainstream stuff. And I suppose when you're a kid or a young adolescent, when we watched it, in fact, I kind of remember how old we were when we watched it, but we must have been, so 88, I would have been 10.
So I assume we probably would have watched it. We didn't watch it at the cinema, so we would have watched it on VHS, would have hired it out. So we would have maybe a year after it released even. So
looking this up because you said we didn't watch it at the cinema. Because I remember seeing RoboCop 2 at the cinema.
I'm pretty sure we didn't watch it at the cinema. I think we watched Kickboxer.
At the cinema, do we?
I think we watched Kickboxer.
Yeah.
Kickboxer, definitely, yeah.
At the cinema?
Yeah.
Really? I can't remember that. Because I remember RoboCop was really... Wait, did we watch... I know we watched RoboCop 2. That's the one I was thinking of, RoboCop 2.
I don't think we watched the original. Oh, think we did watch the first RoboCop in the cinemas.
I'm thinking of RoboCop 2 we were watching in the cinema because that was really traumatic. That was 1990.
Yeah.
So I guess if I thought hard enough, I would remember what movies we actually watched at the cinema back then, which would actually be useful for this series. Okay, so as the title of the video or the series suggests, it's a sip of cinema, which means that we're sipping on something. And I'm sipping on George Dickel Tennessee whiskey number 12. It's not 12 years old. It's just the 12th recipe. And it's very nice. And
I'm sipping on the Hennessy cognac.
Hennessy, very special. Well, it's a sort of a limited run with Lay Twins. That's what I call a pop.
Cheers.
Actually, we should do cheers, shouldn't we?
Cheers.
Yep. Cheers.
I don't think we should put the label on the screen. We're not getting any endorsements.
Yeah, not yet. I think we have to drink the same thing every time to get an endorsement. All right. I think without further ado, we're getting to Bloodsport. Actually, further to what we were saying before, I think we sort of were drawn to specific people within the entertainment industry, and particularly in terms of the action movie genre, like Stallone, Schwarzenegger, and Van Damme.
Yeah, definitely. We wanted to look like them, I guess. We wanted muscles. We thought they were cool.
Yeah.
Yes, they were like, I guess, our heroes growing up. So.
And they were sort of related to, and they're also related to the action figures and that whole, I guess, the aesthetic, that type of aesthetic, He-Man type of aesthetic, superheroes.
Oh, yeah.
All right, so Bloodsport, released in 1988, starring Jean Claude Van Damme. I really should have the. Let me get the.
I think Bloodsport was the movie where Van Damme was being considered for the role, and the director was still unsure who to cast, and that was the story about how he did the jump kick in front of the director.
Oh yeah,
and he got the role that way. So.
Oh really?
He was quite persistent.
I mean, he's got the right look for that type of thing. He sort of pops off the screen with his physique and his sort of athleticism and his ballet background. But yeah, Bloodsport, 1988, directed by Newt Arnold. If you watch it these days, I mean, it's not the most perfectly acted film of all time, but sometimes that's not the point. But we'll talk about that as we move through, because I want to say a few things about Forest Whitaker, who is extremely young in this film, but actually very good.
Big face.
Yeah, we'll definitely get to that soon. All right, so the film itself begins with a montage of all the fighters training overseas. All right, so we get the fighter different fighters from different parts of Asia. We got the brash American Ray Jackson. We got a fighter from Africa. And there's all types of different fighters. I mean, it's pretty amazing how varied
different martial arts. Yeah,
because everyone looks different, they talk different, they fight different. I suppose some of the Chinese fighters are a bit similar, but overall, if you look at the broad spectrum of the fighters in the KUMITE, that's what makes it way more interesting, I think. Okay, and you get some background clues about the nature of the KUMITE. We learned that it's the secret underground karate tournament. It's quite dangerous. It has this reputation that people die. And we'll get to that because that's a very important aspect of the plot. And we're introduced to Frankie Dux, upon whom the story is based. So if you look up Frank Dux, he was a very interesting man. Whether or not you believe the events of his life is up to you, but there is some dispute.
Yeah, I heard that. Yeah, I heard that it may not be a true life event, true life story.
But sometimes those life events make for a good movie or a good TV show because it sort of forms the basis of what. But also, this idea of this tournament, this combat tournament, isn't new. And I think it had a close relation to some of the games that we played as well. Like we could make that sort of intellectual.
Yeah, from what I read, that it heavily influenced Mortal Kombat. So,
oh, really?
Like Johnny Cage was based on Van Damme. So,
oh, really?
Yeah. So because he's like movie star, good-looking movie star. And
yeah,
it's interesting because they did like Mortal Kombat did borrow a lot of different aspects of the movie Bloodsport and
yeah, that's interesting.
Digitized.
Okay, and we're also introduced to Ray Jackson, who becomes Frank Dux's sidekick. So there's a couple of archetypes that you'll see in this film. We have the hero's journey, and we have the master-student archetype. We have the sidekick archetype, and the villain, obviously. So the hero versus villain, sort of archetypical final confrontation within the hero's journey. And that type of, story structure is very familiar to people. And I think that's also what sort of attracts people to that type of story. If you look through the history of cinema, like the hero's journey is so common. And then when you add to that the sort of overcoming the villain through mortal combat, through this life and death struggle, sort of adds another dimension to the victory, as we see with Frankie by the end. All right, and then we learn that Frankie Dux is a military guy, and he sort of goes AWOL from his base near the start of the film. He literally runs away.
He jumps out of the toilet.
Yeah, he pretends to take a shower and then literally runs away. And then before Frank leaves for Hong Kong, he visits his old master, Mr. Tanaka.
Mr. Tanaka.
And then, of course, Mr. Tanaka's wife answers the door, and then Frankie goes in and sees the legendary katana, the katana blade. And then all the memories come flooding back. So the flashback scenes are very interesting. They're not very well acted. They're very interesting from a character development perspective in terms of the plot as well, because it sets the stage for Frank's sort of central motivation throughout the film. Okay, and this is something that I noticed with the on the first flashback scene when the teenagers break into Tanaka's house. Frankie looks kind of retarded. I don't know if you saw that. Like, he looks a little slow. Like, he's the he's got
yeah.
Asperger's or something. I don't know if you noticed that, but I saw that on.
Yeah, he had a bit of
What I
simple
saw.
Jack in him. Yeah.
He did, yeah. Because his friends run away and he sort of stands there looking really blank. It's really funny. That's something I noticed. Like, there's some things like that I sort of noticed as a kid, but I didn't process what that actually meant. But seeing it as an adult, he just looks really slow. Like, he takes a minute to like process what's happening. And then when he's putting the katana back, Tanaka's kid comes out and literally kicks his ass. Like, he just has this roundhouse kick to the guts, and then Frankie like basically falls over. The kid is literally half his size, and just kicks his ass with one kick. But then later on, Tanaka's kid isn't that tough because he's really, really tiny and gets bullied. But then Frankie steps in and saves the day. That's another aspect. Other thing I noticed with this scene is when Tanaka's kid, I can't remember what he says. He says something, but he says, "When I grow up, I'm going to be as tough as my dad," or something like that. But I noticed that Tanaka's kid's eyes are looking down, but Frankie's like twice his size. So it looks like he's reading lines from behind Frank. It looks really weird if you rewatch that scene. But that kid was definitely not a professional actor, I don't think. I mean, he's probably good at martial arts. He had that really good kick. Yeah, it looked like it looks like he's reading off a cue card. All right, and then we sort of flash forward in time. Frankie's all grown up, and Tanaka's kid is all grown up. But Tanaka's kid goes to fight in the KUMITE, and he dies. All right, and then you get this highly emotional scene with Frankie and Mr. Tanaka, because Tanaka wanted to pass down the sword and pass down his knowledge to his son, father to son throughout the generations.
Tradition,
yeah. So you get that sort of Japanese warrior tradition showing up in this film, and so because Tanaka doesn't have a son anymore, he agrees to train Frank Dux. I don't know why my throat's. And then we get one of the best aspects. This is one of the best parts of sort of watching action films in the 80s and 90s is the training montage. Okay,
it's in every action movie in the 80s and 90s. Had to have a montage.
And what does a montage always have?
It has cool music.
Exactly, the montage has cool music. And I made a note of the music later on in another montage, but not with this one. But in this montage, we see Frankie getting his ass kicked quite often by Mr. Tanaka, as one does when they're training. I don't know if we do Kickboxer later, I'll remember. But he also had a training montage in that book. I think they both had like a splits development aspect to it, right?
Doing the splits,
like
like stretching, splitting his legs apart.
Yeah, so like
With,
overstretching, yeah,
with
like
brute force, yeah.
forcing the ligaments. Yeah. But that sort of became Van Damme's calling card, is his ability to do splits in ridiculous situations.
Yeah.
But of course, doing the splits on the film screen actually looks really cool.
And he's got that scissor kick as well, the jumping
yeah.
scissor
So
kick. Where
it's
he does
basically
jump kick splits, I guess. Yeah.
yeah, because it's literally a ballet move, but he sort of adapts it into a devastating martial arts attack. Okay, what's next? Okay, so we got the splits training, we got pain training. All right, so adapting to different levels of pain is also a pretty common aspect of fight adaptation, I suppose. And then it concludes with Mr. Tanaka ceremoniously bestowing his katana onto Frank, which is mirrored at the end after he defeats Chong Li. The organizer of the KUMITE bestows a katana upon Frank as well. So there's a nice little bookend, sort of symbolic consistency between Tanaka and the KUMITE itself. All right, and then of course the bestowing the katana is representative of the master-student archetype. And then we flash back to the present. Mr. Tanaka's on his deathbed. Of course, Frankie vows to avenge Tanaka's son's death and to bring honor to the house of Tanaka in the KUMITE. And then in Hong Kong, okay, then we flash to Hong Kong. We're introduced to Janice. The American reporter is trying to get the scoop on the KUMITE. She's hanging out in the bar of the hotel where all the fighters are staying, and she's trying to get some information, shall we say.
Trying to get friendly with all the competitors.
Then she succeeds, of course, with Mr. Frankie Dux, as we'll get to later on.
Oh, she had that encounter with the other fighter first, didn't she? When he was going to drag her off to have a private conversation.
Yeah, yes, we'll get to that. I've got a few things to say, but let's just put it that way. And then, but Frankie doesn't meet Janice yet. He first meets Mr. Ray Jackson, the other American competitor in the KUMITE. And do you remember what Ray Jackson is playing?
What is he playing?
Hmm.
What do you mean?
So in the hotel, because it's a Hong Kong and it's a really cool hotel, they've got an arcade machine with Karate Champ.
Oh, it's a Karate Champ, yeah.
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 And then Ray's playing, and then Frankie walks up and Ray says, "Yeah, you want to compete? You want to go?
You think you can do better?"
Yeah, you think you can do better. And yeah, and of course Frankie just destroys Ray in Karate Champ. It's sort of foreshadowing for the rest of the tournament. Well, I guess that's the only time they compete. You know, they don't actually fight for real.
Yeah.
I think we all know how that would end up anyway. And then we're introduced to the CIA agents, Rawlins and Helmer, who are on Frankie Dux' trail, and they're visiting Captain Chong, I think. from the Hong Kong Police Department, trying to gather information of Frankie. And Rawlins is played by a very young Forest Whitaker. And you can sort of tell the sort of level of acting ability when you watch Rawlins, Forest Whitaker in this movie. Like, he's probably the only one that can actually act, and you can sort of tell. Like, if you pay attention to that type of thing, you can tell. Because he's sort of a hothead. He's really impatient compared to his partner, Helmer. But sort of an interesting dynamic, seeing a very young, unfamous Forest Whitaker in a role like that. But that's something you can look at, upon repeat viewings, because you know who Forest Whitaker is.
Definitely.
Okay, and then we're introduced to their Hong Kong contact for the KUMITE.
What's his name again?
Unfortunately, I didn't write down his name. Damn it. But it's a short guy with a glass. We all know who he is.
It's hilarious.
What is it?
I said he's a hilarious.
Oh, he's hilarious, yeah.
Yeah.
He's really funny, but his name doesn't even come up on IMDb, which is really weird. Everyone else is on IMDb, but it's not Victor, is it? Is it Victor?
Doesn't sound familiar.
No. All right, and then so they're introduced to their contact in Hong Kong, and then Ray Jackson introduces him, and then this guy says, "Hey, you look like a Jackson," which is pretty funny because he's obviously making reference to the Jackson 5 for Michael Jackson, and so Ray doesn't look anything like that, and so it's sort of this ironic, ridiculous joke that you would miss if you weren't paying attention. But I thought that was a clever bit of writing. And then we have this.
Okay, USA. Okay, USA.
That's right. Okay, USA. So again, so I said at the very, very beginning of this video, of this stream, I should say, that one of the most important aspects of movies like this is those one-liners that you repeat as a kid. And so OK USA was probably up there with the most repeated line in this movie. There's heaps of lines, as you'll see, but that was right up there.
That wasn't even one of the main characters, or
no.
It's just one extra, one scene.
He was kind of funny looking, and he says it really weirdly as well. He has this weird, super deep voice. It's sort of this. He's sort of doing an impression of an American, which makes it hilarious.
Yeah.
And to follow that up, we have another wonderful, memorable line from this film when. Okay, so they actually walk into the venue for the KUMITE. You see the platform. It's not a ring, it's not an octagon, it's just a platform that sort of raises up and down. And you can see where the audience sits, all around like a bull ring. And then the organizers on one side and the signs for the different fighters on one side. And then you meet the administrators of the KUMITE, and they're sort of giving Frankie Dux a hard time because they don't believe that he's a student of Mr. Tanaka, who's very, very famous. And so they tell him he needs to perform a very special move. I'm sure you can remember.
If Senzo Tanaka is his Shidoshi, then show us the dim mak.
What the hell is a Dimac?
Death touch.
That's right, the death touch, the dim muck. And it's not just breaking a brick; it's breaking a brick on the bottom of the row. Okay, not the top, but the bottom. So that was a very funny scene. I mean, Jackson has some great lines in this movie. He's sort of the MVP outside of Van Damme.
Yeah, it's definitely the comedy relief, I guess.
Yeah,
I think most of the comedies around him.
I think so. I think he has some great moments, some great lines.
Yeah.
So the Dim Mak scene is, I guess the Dim Mak is based on, I guess, what we currently understand as sort of martial arts mythology, like this idea of a one-punch kill type of thing. Sort of a common aspect of certain martial arts movies or certain ancient tales within, the ancient tales within the context of, martial arts or, Asian culture. This idea of you can just hit someone once and then they'll die.
Yeah, I imagine it's like if you do that move on someone's chest, it's like it won't break your like rib cage, but it'll like explode your heart or something like that.
Yeah. So that's it sort of reminds me of like that punch, like where you push the bridge of their nose into their brain, that type of thing. It's sort of this one strike death blow. But it's interesting you say that because upon rewatching it, I think Frankie actually does a Dim Mak in the tournament. So we'll get to that. We'll get to that later. Obviously, his opponent doesn't die, but in my opinion, it's a Dim Mak. And also, after he does the Dim Mak, we see Bolo Yung, which is, I keep calling him Bolo because that's who he always was to me. Like from Bruce Lee movies to this movie. So Chong Li, played by Bolo Yung, sort of a legendary figure in martial arts films in the 80s. So he's looking on. You get the impression that he's going to be an important character, but you don't get the impression there's going to be the main villain yet. Not yet. And then we see a scene with the CIA guys looking for Frankie at the police department. And then we skip to back to the hotel bar. And guess who it is? It's Janice. Janice who knows the reporter. The snitch, as I'll talk about later on.
Snitches get stitches.
Snitch is gonna get a Saudi guy be kidnapped by a Saudi Arabian prince who can fight. So she has a confrontation with. I'm calling them the Saudi guys. Okay, it's not made clear which country they're from, but it's somewhere in the Middle East, in the UAE, as we'll call it these days. But it's funny because the fighter's name is Hussein, but it's played by an Asian guy. I guess I couldn't find a real Middle Eastern guy to play a guy named Hussein. And that leads to another funny line.
Leave the girl alone.
He's the American shithead who makes tricks with bricks.
Guess the KUMITE starts one day earlier this year.
So it's just it's the way these weird, unimportant characters, like as you said, extras just say the line. It's just they look funny, they talk funny, and they make like these basic insults on one-liners way more memorable than they should be. So yeah, fun to say, fun to hear, fun to see in a movie, so it becomes memorable.
I thought like watching this back. I mean, watching it as a kid, like it was funny, but it was like I find it more funny as an adult though than I did back then.
No, that's completely understandable because we sort of understand a lot more about. We can draw, we can make more connections when we see different things, and see the irony in certain situations and what people say. And this concept is really apparent in The Simpsons, because in my opinion, we missed at least 80% of the jokes in The Simpsons. And I don't mean we didn't laugh at the jokes. I mean, we didn't fully comprehend where the jokes came from.
Yeah, I
the
think
origins of it.
Like even like kids movies today or animated movies, there's a lot of adult jokes in it that kids just they're not going to get because they're kids.
I know, yeah. Yeah. Well, that sort of elevates a regular kids movie above just a sort of run of the mill. Like we were talking about Coco the other day, and that's definitely not a little kids movie. Like it's just a good movie. Anyway, back to Bloodsport. Okay, the tournament finally begins. And then we actually get some action on the map. At first, we have Sen Ling versus Suwan Paredes. Suwan, I'm assuming, is Brazilian because he's doing the capoeira type of moves. And he makes short work of Sen Ling. Next, we have the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Ray Jackson, with his Harley Davidson headband, facing off against what I wrote in my notes was the tight pants elf. So Ray Jackson's first opponent is probably the most ridiculously dressed person in the tournament. So he had skin tight leggings with like this silk belt around his waist. So you knew he was going to get his ass kicked really quickly. So Jackson sort of takes it easy at the start of the fight, but then you sort of, because the tight pants elf actually smacks him in the face and makes him bleed. Then after that sort of wakes him up. And so Jackson sort of grabs him, manhandles him, and then does this devastating like overhead hammer punch,
hammer drop,
and it pretty much shatters his nose into 1,000 pieces. And this guy's done pretty much for 6 months probably. So he makes short work of the tight pants elf who shouldn't have been there in the first place. And we get our first fight with Mr. Chong Li, who fights a man named Booty Man Prang. All right, and Chong Li makes short work of him as well. Obviously, Chong Li is always brutal in the tournament. He doesn't need to be. He can easily defeat pretty much everyone except Frankie. But he sort of wants to show off. I mentioned before to you in an earlier conversation that there's a lot of showboating in this tournament for some reason.
Yeah.
It's such a serious and dangerous tournament. There's a lot of showboating.
Yeah, I think it's they like to I think it's the intimidation factor as well. Playing up to the crowd and things.
I think that's especially true for Chong Li.
Yeah, for Chong Li,
he only showboats to be intimidating and for his own ego probably, but mainly for intimidation. Next, we get Frankie's first battle against Hossein, to the guy he humiliated in the hotel. So I said in my notes that Frankie uses the force in this fight because he sort of knocks down Hossein, and Hossein sort of gets up, and then Frankie just puts his hand, and then Hossein goes back. almost like
He
a force push.
falls unconscious again.
Yeah, but we thought he was unconscious. Then he just like gets up, pushes the ref away, and then really gets knocked out for real.
Yeah,
So
he
that,
actually like he actually did get knocked out in that scene because Van
he
Damme
actually did.
accidentally connected the elbow. Yeah,
Oh,
it's
damn.
because they actually left it in the film as well that the
Yeah.
elbow did connect him, and
Damn.
yeah, he got knocked out. That was a real knockout.
Yeah, that's something I noticed in this movie as well. Is some of the kicks and punches actually made contact. So they sort of added another layer of realism to this movie as well. Like, especially if you compare it to like a Rocky movie, you can sort of see sort of the gaps between where the punch goes and where the face is.
Yeah.
But I think in this movie they did a really good job in terms of editing and camera angles. Okay, so Hossein gets knocked out, and then we get another montage. This time it's a fight montage. So everyone loves a fight tournament montage. And then we get the great song "Fight to Survive." All right, so I made a note of the song because it's a great song. It's got KUMITE repeated in the chorus. So it's a very specific song for this movie, and it works really well. And we see the kickboxer Paco. So Paco is sort of one of the more memorable and notable fighters in the tournament because he's Thai kickboxing, which is always, but he looks like a European guy. He's definitely not Thai. So yeah, the Thai kickboxing style is always really attractive in a fighting tournament. Sort of reminiscent of Sagat in Street Fighter 2.
Mainly kicks and elbows.
Yeah. So Paco is a bit of a dirty fighter, but he's he's highly skilled. He's got really strong kicks. Because we see him like disable one guy with his kicks. Because that's what people don't realize. Like when a kickboxer kicks you in the leg, like you're pretty much disabled. Because the kick is so hard. Like even if it's against your thigh, like it'll bruise your thigh so much that you won't be able to use the leg. Like that's sort of a weapon.
The kicks are so fast, like whipping kicks, and it's like so much strength behind it, so much force. It's like hitting you in your knee or in your shins or in your thighs.
Yeah,
it's definitely it does more damage than we think it is when you're watching a real fight.
Because you normally think, if you get hit in the thick part of your leg, you'd be fine. But yeah. And so we get a scene where the CIA guys are eating on the boat. I guess they're eating at the docks. Some disgusting food.
Some boat restaurant or something.
Yeah, and then they get a tip off that Frankie Dux is at the hotel, and then Frankie runs away after Ray sort of pushes them around, I guess. And he doesn't get arrested for it, which is kind of surprising. But I remember the Forest Whitaker's character Rawlins. He has like a cattle prod, I guess. This electric taser weapon.
Yeah, I think it's a cattle prod, I'd say.
Yeah. So the captain gives them information. Yeah. And then we also have another great line from Mr. Ray Jackson.
I ate your pal Dickface.
Another memorable line from Ray Jackson. Wait, let's see that again.
I ate your pal Dickface.
I think that line is influential. Didn't you use that in public once?
I did. It was I was playing basketball. It's an actual real game, and I got called for cross court,
Yeah.
and I protested that it wasn't cross court, and I called the ref dick face, and then he gave me a tech.
You probably deserved it.
Yeah, it actually was cross court.
It actually was cross court. Okay. Get some water. I get another montage. This time of Frankie running away from the slow CIA agents. And then we cut to him having dinner with Janice, who's having dinner with him to get the scoop. And she does. She sort of convinces him to sort of help her out. And we sort of see an ass shot of him the next morning. This gratuitous ass shot of Van Damme, which I guess they want to give something for the ladies in this film. But it is really gratuitous because it's not natural. Like, because the camera pans to him, they wait a bit, and then like he pulls his drawers up.
But he does like exercise his butt cheeks though. Like he's always notorious for doing that.
Is he?
And I remember Street Fighter, Street Fighter movie.
Oh, the Street Fighter.
And yeah, and I believe it was Kylie Minogue. He was like giving her like advice about doing like glute exercises and stuff like that. And she herself has like a magnificent derriere as well. So
really? She's got the glutes.
Well, in her younger days.
Yeah. That's interesting. I didn't know that. I suppose that makes sense. It probably helps with the flexibility for Van Damme, I should say. And then after that, we have day 2 of the KUMITE. We have Paco, the Brazilian, against Toon Wing Sum. So Paco, lots of knees and elbows. Poor Toon copped a lot of sharp bones to the face and ribs in this fight. And so Paco makes short work of him. Frankie's second fight, very balletic. I wrote that it was very balletic because it was. There's lots of, like that kick you mentioned before, it sort of jumps in the air, does the ballet splits.
I don't know what balletic is.
Like ballet.
Oh, balletic.
Like ballet.
Gotcha.
Like, you know. Yeah. So
older. Ballet-esque, like
ballet-esque,
Jordan-esque.
Yeah. So lots of very pretty moves in that fight. I didn't get the opponent's name, but next we have Bolo's. I keep calling you Bolo. Chong Li's second fight.
Chong Li
versus Paredes, the Brazilian. And so this fight ends very gruesomely. Spoiler alert. So Paredes does pretty good at the start of the fight, but it looks like Bolo is enjoying the punishment. He enjoys sort of bleeding, I guess. I don't know. But then Bolo sort of snaps, and then I use the word deliberately, but Bolo sort of wakes up, I guess, and then sort of kicks him in the leg. Kicks Paredes in the leg. I say that's like foreshadowing for what's to come. And the Paredes are sort of limping around.
I remember seeing that as a kid. That was really horrific and brutal. It's like you can't look at the screen. You have to turn away. It's quite, yeah.
Yeah, there was.
I remember
the make. I remember watching it again like that. The makeup for that was really good. The special effects. because it looks really weird.
The bone sticking out and everything.
Yeah, it's really good. And so we get so the camera sort of cuts to Janice in the crowd, and she has these like shocked faces every time. And she's about to feel she's about to be nauseous, let's just say. And then Bolo sort of beats up Paredes and has him, by the scruff of the neck. And you think he's just going to knock him out, but no, he actually stomps on his, lower leg and splits his shin in two. And we see the bone sort of protrude from the skin. And Paredes screaming on the ground. And then I think I remember Janice like turning away, or like she was going to puke or something.
Yeah, I'd say so.
But yeah, I failed to mention that Janice got into the tournament because what is she doing? She's with one of the rich guys, I think. It's not really clear why. How she got in, but
I think it could be one of the promoters or something.
But the compound fracture is sort of exemplifies the level of brutality that Chong Li enjoys, but it's completely unnecessary because Paredes is basically finished.
Oh, the fight was over.
Yeah, the fight was over. And that sort of becomes a common theme for Chong Li throughout the tournament. We get Frankie's next fight, and he's got this really nice red jacket. I shouldn't say jacket, more like a gi. Nice silk red gi. And it makes easy work of his next opponent, which is more like a montage than an actual fight. And then we get the memorable scene between Frankie and João. Frankie and João Gomez, which sounds like a Brazilian soccer player. But if you recall, he's sort of the black guy who does sign language and then immediately gets kicked off the mat.
Yeah.
So he's doing this type of thing. And it's like breaking. Like his sign language was longer than the actual fight because he just basically gets kicked off the mat pretty much straight away.
It's it's unexpected though. It's like you're kind of expecting something different, like putting up a fight or something. But yeah,
you're expecting some sort of confrontation.
Yeah, there's some bit of comedy in it.
Yeah, I think. Well, that's the thing about Bloodsport is that a lot of the comedy that they deliberately put in to the movie is very subtle. Like it's not goofball comedy, but the comedy's there if you sort of pay attention. All right, and then we have the gigantic, the mountain Asian versus
Honda,
the little African. Yeah, so the gigantic Asian is called Pumola. Pumola, which is a really cool name. But you're right. So he does remind me of E Honda for sure, especially what he wears. He doesn't wear much, but what he does wear is sort of very similar to E Honda. And he just destroys the little African guy who's sort of bouncing around like a...
With the E Honda move as well.
That's right.
The bear hug.
Yeah. So
give him a big hug of love.
Yeah. The hug of death. Yeah. So we see the little African guy sort of climbing trees, cracking coconuts at the start of the movie, and he sort of tries to do the same move to Pomola, but bad things happen because Pomola is literally 3 times or more, 3 times the size of this guy. So the African guy actually should have kept some distance. Because the one thing you don't want to do if you're him is sort of get close so that Pomola can sort of grab him and destroy him.
But it was kind of like a comical fight because he was like rolling around and jumping around.
Yeah.
And he's like trying to chop him on the head or hit him in the balls or something like that. And
yeah,
he's like always escaping. And it was like quite comical for the crowd as well.
Yeah, that's true. But yeah, the absurdity of the spectacle was hilarious. But then, as you mentioned, he sort of grabs him. Pomola grabs him and sort of puts him into this death grip, bear hug. And guess who's shocked again? That's right, Janice. So we cut to Janice's face, who's, all kinds of shocked on the sidelines. She's probably regretting sneaking into this tournament at this stage. And then we cut to Frankie fighting Pomola. So Frankie's actually fighting Pomola next within the context of the film. I say probably. So this also has one of the more memorable finishing moves in the tournament. So Pomola tries to give him the bear hug move, but Frankie headbutts him. So the African guy
the headbutts were pretty cool. Gave him a few headbutts.
Yeah. So the African guy was too small to headbutt. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So this headbutt combo to take down Pomola. And then this is where I think Frankie does the dim back. He's the against Pomola because he sort of does this strike like this against his chest, which stuns him. Yeah. But then Pomola sort of recovers and does a rush grab. But then Frankie sort of does a splits and does a nut punch. But then that's
that testicle tickler splits move.
That's right. Exactly. So that's the end of Pomola. And then we get the first big matchup of the KUMITE, the first gigantic match. And that's between Jackson and Bolo. Jackson and Chong Li. And sort of the music and Frankie's facial expression sort of lets the audience know this, this is something really, it's significant, but then also at the same time, something really bad could happen.
Yeah, very foreboding.
Very foreboding.
Like the music and stuff.
Yeah. Which is sort of in contradiction to Jackson's sort of attitude as he bounds onto the stage. Onto the mat. And so Jackson, he comes out swinging as usual and sort of makes contact, gets a few hits in on Chong Li, and knocks him down, of course. But then again, the showboating, as I mentioned before, way too much showboating. Especially like this.
Oh yeah, he's like celebrating early Jackson.
Yeah.
And then Frank Dux was like, keep going.
Yeah. Frankie knew there's something bad that's going to happen if you just
Mm.
because you don't want to turn your back to an opponent in a tournament, especially when the fight isn't declared over. Especially when you have like a dangerous opponent like Chong Li as well. Because as the audience, you're sort of wanting him to shut up and take this a bit more seriously because we know, what Chong Li is capable of. But yeah, I guess his showboating led to his downfall because Bolo recovers, gets up, and just starts destroying him as Frank watches helplessly from the sideline. And so Ray gets knocked to the mat, and then we see Bolo with his flying
Chong Li.
stop. Chong Li. I've wrote Bolo in my notes, and we see Chong Li with the flying foot stomp to the head, which is a very devastating move. Which is a move that I think could actually kill a person. Like, I think Frankie mentions that, like Ray has a hard head or something.
Yeah, I think he does mention that because he did break a brick on his head, and then
That's right.
I think they mentioned it. I think towards the end when he's in hospital or something. Like, thank goodness he got a hard head or something.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I think that's what I'm remembering. Yeah, but yeah, definitely a move that could easily kill someone. So again, Chong Li with the unnecessary brutality, and then we cut to Jackson in the hospital with a severe concussion, and he's in a coma. And then Frankie sort of pledges to avenge his friend. And I didn't mention that. Oh, that's right. Oh, yeah, that's right. So I should mention that after the flying foot stomp and destroying Jackson's head, Chong Li takes Jackson's headband and sort of starts taunting Frankie with it. And that sort of becomes the impetus for Frankie's vengeance.
Mm.
Yeah, so Frankie pledges to avenge his friend and to honor Tanaka in his performance in the KUMITE. And then we have Janice the Snitch. So we see Janice at the Hong Kong Police Department snitching on Frankie to the captain that the CIA agents were talking to. And then we get another montage, this time without... Actually, we do have fighting in this montage. But this montage features the song On My Own Alone, which is a hilarious name for a song, On My Own Alone.
It's when he does that soul searching, walking around.
And it's on the bus. There's a memorable scene on the bus where he sees Chong Li's reflection in the window.
Oh, yeah.
That was a really good scene when I was a kid. Like, that was genuinely terrifying. And he looks to his side and he's not there. I thought that was a really clever bit of filmmaking. But I think this movie has these really nice scenes and moments and film making decisions throughout, which sort of elevates it, I think. And there's another scene, really beautiful scene I want to talk about later. Actually, no, that's now. So, that's now. So, at the end of this montage, you get a really incredible shot of Frankie doing the splits and doing some meditation above Hong Kong.
Oh, yeah.
So he's on the balcony of the hotel, and you see Hong Kong down below, and he's sort of doing the splits and meditating, and just an amazing shot. So yeah, So there's some interesting cinematography in this film and directorial choices. And then the CIA guys confront Frankie in the alleyways of Hong Kong, but then he he uses the lid of the bin as a shield when they use the cattle prods,
and it tases.
And bounces off the lid of the bin and hits the other cops. It's pretty funny. And then, of course, they have to negotiate at that point. And then Frankie says, "I'll meet you at the airport, but I gotta fight. I gotta win for Tanaka and my friend Ray Jackson." And so the CIA guys sort of agree to that. And then we got some more fights at the KUMITE. We got Frankie versus Paco. Remember Paco, the kickboxer? So this is like a really important bout as well. Like if you're watching the tournament on TV and you saw the bracket, you'd be excited to see Paco versus Frankie Dux. So this would be one of the prime matchups. And so it doesn't start off really well for Frankie, who gets fooled into. so Paco does the fists in the air to
the friendly touch gloves.
The friendly touch gloves
gesture.
Yeah, and then Frankie does it and then gets kicked in the leg and overhead punch to the face. But then after that, Frankie adopts a more kick-oriented kickboxing style. And then they have... he basically outkicks Paco, the kickboxer. And they have this exchange where they sort of start kicking each other in the ribs. But then Frankie just kicks too much. Like, Paco can't keep up with Frankie's kicks.
Yeah, it was like he was goading him into open shots, like free kick,
free kicks, yeah,
and they were just exchanging kicks, free kicks,
free kicks, yeah. And then Frankie just like overkicked, like he just like kicked and kicked and kicked, and Paco couldn't keep up, and so he sort of finishes him off with a spinning roundhouse kick to the head. And then we see Bolo fighting, and I noted that Bolo is very nimble for a big guy. He's probably one of the biggest guys in the tournament, but he's always sort of bouncing on his feet like a boxer. He's very sort of quick and lithe. Then he kills a guy. All right, so if you're watching the film up to this point, you probably figured that Bolo is going to kill someone at some point. So he sort of knocks the guy down, punches him in the face, and then breaks his neck. And then I guess the whole tournament, the audience, the organizers, the administrators, the referee, Frankie Dux, they're all sort of disgusted by him and turn their back on him. And Bolo isn't phased at all. He still wants to do his own thing, and he isn't influenced by anyone else's disgust at his murderous behavior. Bolo is just way too hype. So Bolo, at the end of this fight, is sort of swinging his arms around and making like weird, like animal faces. Like he's sort of the most beastly fighter.
I feel he was definitely trying to intimidate Frank Dux in this fight, and I think he's just going to the extreme with it, like just showing that what he's capable of, I guess, and it's to kill a person.
It's a kill a person, yeah. No, you can't get more extreme than that, is to actually kill someone.
Yeah, and the punishment is just getting your back turned. Back against you.
Yeah. But it sort of comes back to this notion of honor. So we sort of visited this notion of honor when Frankie was sort of talking to Tanaka near the start of the film. and honor plays an important role in, Japanese warrior tradition and, sort of the martial arts. So them turning his back is sort of this ultimate, stance of that they're not going to endure, such insolence in their tournament, even though it is an underground, dangerous tournament. There's still standards of, how you're supposed to behave in a fight. And speaking of intimidation,
You are next.
so this is another line that we would repeat as a kid, because it sounds like when he says next, it just sounds like there's like 4 or 5 syllables for some reason. That's right. I don't know why it sounds like that. But that sort of, again, it's like, it's not the line itself, it's how they say it in this film that makes it memorable. But yeah, further to your point about intimidation, like that's definitely valid, especially within the context of Chong Li, like literally pointing out Frankie Dux and saying you're next. And they literally are next. Actually, no. Frankie is literally next. Because they're up to the final fight. I'm just looking. Okay. And we're up to the final fight. Frankie Dux versus Chong Li, a.k.a. Bolo Yeung. And so for the final fight, they raise the platform a bit more. So instead of us just talking about the scene in the most boring way possible, let's have a look at it, shall we? So we're going to play the scene. We're going to talk over it, add our little commentary. So without further ado, wait, let me go back. Yeah, so this is great. So we were sort of talking privately about sort of the acrobatic visual nature of the martial arts and Bloodsport. And this sort of still sort of represents that sort of aesthetic of Van Damme's like ballet past and using, his physique and his sort of physical ability to make the martial arts more beautiful and interesting rather than sort of fast and devastating in a way. But yeah, we sort of see the sort of the lack of speed, I guess, within the martial arts for this movie and other sort of American martial arts movies, as opposed to something like, Enter the Dragon or other sort of Jackie Chan movies that we saw growing up,
But I feel it's mainly this fight that they've slowed down, like some of the hand combat and the action sequences. It's because previous fights there was some like normal speed, like quick martial art like fights like previously in this tournament. So I think they did it especially just for the final fight. I feel.
Yeah, and they're sort of represented in this particular sequence here.
The crowd is entertained.
Yeah, that standing triple kick wasn't very practical. You know, it's a very slow. It sort of leaves you open.
Yeah,
but it looks good on film. Yeah, another great jump kick, and Van Damme sort of typical like flex and scream, which sort of became a really common occurrence in his films.
it was like Chong Li just leaves himself open
Yeah,
in that as well. He just walks up to him and takes a jump kick in the face, and
yeah,
so you're like wondering what he's up to.
Yeah.
Like, why is he just walking into attacks?
But I saw that in other Chong Li fights in the tournament. He sort of takes a lot of damage, but it doesn't phase him. It's sort of like he just wants to feel something sometimes. I don't know.
Come on now, dude. Come on.
Yeah, that sequence is very slow.
Yeah,
That's an interesting pause screen.
yeah, that the exchanges. Yeah, it's not realistic. It's more for visual and flair, I guess.
And it's for the sound effects as well. Like they can make the punch sounds more meaty, I guess. I don't know.
Mm.
I guess it adds more emphasis to each blow. Yeah, and that sort of front kick, that high front kick became another calling card of Van Damme. Yeah, no showboating from Frankie here. So Chong Li has some of the coke he was snorting earlier in the day.
Someone should have seen that.
Yeah, it was pretty obvious. Wasn't
It was very obvious. You should still have powder all over his face as well.
Probably. Well, what would stick to his sweat? But I think the ref would get some of the powder as well because it was just like
Yeah.
thrown pretty much around like the whole that.
Hmm.
But I thought this sequence is pretty well done in terms of creating a sense of, I guess, fear and disconnectedness within Frankie's character. That was pretty basic what he did just then. It's just like kicked his leg from under him so he could like just lie in the ground. Compared to what he
Helpless.
did earlier in the tournament, you know. You would
I
think
guess
it was
he's just planning on playing with his food now, I guess.
that's a good point. Actually, that's a pretty good analogy in terms of playing with his food. I mean, Charlie is pretty bestial, as we've mentioned before. And his facial, like his exaggerated facial expressions and stuff. Like, I don't remember all this when, you know, when Bolo Yeung was in, say, in Bruce Lee movies. I should look up which Bruce Lee movies he was in.
He's in Enter the Dragon, I remember.
I'm pretty sure, yeah, I thought he was in Into the Dragon, wasn't sure. And he was in Double Impact.
Yeah, he was in Dublin. He's chucking barrels.
Yeah, chucking barrels like in a bloody video game.
Donkey Kong.
Yeah, I'd imagine Frankie's ribs would hurt after this.
Stop the fight.
yeah, throwing the towel. Like when Apollo was getting destroyed.
Get up, Frankie!
Yeah, I think this is more like shock and frustration than like fear. I think because I get the impression Frankie is the type of person that just gets scared in a fight situation. But I think most of like the makeup and the special effects in this movie is really good, especially for the time, like the blood noses and some of the bruising and other injuries.
Yeah, and the compound fractures.
Don't forget the compound fracture. Yeah.
This could be Van Damme's greatest acting.
That's greatest acting, but just like not saying any lines, just like screaming and making like facial expressions. Yeah, it is very theatrical.
Another montage.
Another montage flashback. That's right.
Remember your training.
Yeah, everything sort of comes comes back around in this film for Frank Dux as a character, like the meditation and the stillness and sort of the remembering what is there for. And that particular punch is exactly what happened in at the table with Mr. Tanaka. So nice callback to that. I think it'd be a tough job being a ref in the KUMITE. Like, it has to be really tough to be a ref in this tournament.
But why is he there though? I don't know why he's there. Because it's not like he can stop people from getting killed.
Yeah.
Because he's just a spectator like everyone else, I guess. Because I don't know what he's really there for. I guess cheating, but yeah, he didn't see that. He didn't see that either.
But that's true, which means he's probably not paying attention. But you can see in any fight tournament or fight, whether it's boxing, UFC, like the ref isn't there. Like the ref literally can't defend himself. So I suppose it's consistent in that way.
I remember I thought this scene was funny when I was a kid.
Yeah, it's a triple windmill kick. And then the nice jumping splits ballet move.
Chong Li did a nice roll too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure what he's trying to do there, Chong Li. Why is he rolling under him?
Maybe like a takedown move around his legs. Yeah, that was a nice back kick. Like, that's a really devastating kick.
Yeah, that's the splits kick.
Yeah, the jumping splits kick.
Jump kick. I can't remember what he called it. Like Van Damme called it some kind of kick.
Oh, really? No.
The knife kick or something like that.
Okay.
Or, no, I think it's the butterfly kick or something like that.
Oh, butterfly.
Something like that, yeah. Or the butterfly knife kick.
He's looking at the camera, right? Like, this is such a.
I think he's looking past the camera. Like, not. I don't feel like he's looking straight at me.
I think he's looking now. I think now he's looking at the camera.
Yeah, I think now.
I think he looks at the camera as he's like falling out of the shot.
Stand! Stand!
So makes you think. Makes you think like the Tanaka martial arts is like so good that like Van Damme could be blind and he can still defeat Chong Li. Like the I guess it's just that style is just
Well, that's
like
that's part of the training is to fight with other
above.
senses. So without those senses, you're going to fight. So yeah.
That's cool.
All right. So just like say like Rocky, the champ is beat up but victorious by the end. And he reclaims Ray Jackson's headband, as he said he would, as he vowed vengeance. Yeah. And so, as I mentioned before, Frankie is awarded the katana as a symbolic reference to his relationship with Mr. Tanaka. He's awarded the katana from the organizers of the KUMITE, of course. And then they're back at the hospital. And Ray Jackson's awake, sitting up, and of course drinking beer. It's not clear what beer he's drinking, but he's definitely drinking it. And we get this incredible, like this is one of the best acting scenes, I think, in the movie.
By the way, next time you fight, try to keep your clothes on.
Anytime, any place, anywhere. If you ever need me, I'll be there.
I love you, my friend.
Me too. Take care.
Oh, that's pretty.
Gay!
Well, I think there's a really good moment to finish the film off. Because people may say, well, how could they become such close friends after meeting for such a short amount of time? Like, the reality is, like, when you're in like a life or death situation with someone, you tend to get closer to them. And so, to me, that's not such an unrealistic outcome of their friendship or their relationship.
Yeah, definitely. So, I guess guys can form that kind of relationship, especially when they're in that situation. So.
Oh, for sure. And it's sort of, I've heard people in the military say that type of thing as well. They sort of miss the camaraderie they have with the other guys in their company, even if they're in a war zone, you know. So it's definitely baked into our, I guess, our makeup in terms of the connections we make with people in life or death situations. And then the film itself finishes with Frankie on the plane back to the United States, again, playing one last trick on the CIA guys who think he's not going to show up, but he's actually beat them to the plane, and he's walks out of the plane and says, "You coming?" And then they say, "Oh, he got us again. That Frankie guy." And then credits roll, and then we get different facts about the life of the real Frank Dux, his sort of KUMITE record, and different, facts about his performances in the KUMITE, which, actually one of the facts is his kick speed. Like, I'm not sure how they're measuring kick speed back then in a karate tournament. But, He's like his kick speed is like 75 miles an hour or something. It's like the fastest kick speed, but I'm not sure how that's done. But anyway, well, there's been Bloodsport. It's been fun talking about one of the most important films in my childhood. And I think the film still holds up. What do you think?
Yeah, definitely. I think anybody who's into 80s, like fighting movies, Sylvester Stallone, Schwarzenegger, definitely check out some Van Damme's work. And yeah, it still holds up after how many years? 30 years.
It's a fun movie to watch, and it's 90 minutes in and out. You know, it's not a huge time commitment, and there's some memorable lines. It's pretty funny. It's some really well choreographed and well shot action scenes, and some truly shocking moments as well, which sort of adds to the entertainment value of it. So, anything else you want to say?
Just I hope whoever's watching enjoyed this, and like, comment, and subscribe.
That's true.
And
you should do that. As you said, like, comment, or whatever. But I don't know what's next. We haven't discussed what the next film will be, but you can be sure that it will be along the same lines in terms of the era. I don't know. It may or may not be a fighting movie. Or we could just do a whole series of fighting movies. We also have, sci-fi. There's different movies to choose from. Heaps. So we'll see everyone next time. And yeah, nothing else to say. Hope you enjoyed the broadcast. See you next time.
see you later.